society is obsessed with forgiveness. We are constantly told to be the bigger person, to let things go, to keep the peace at all costs. But let me ask you a very uncomfortable question. Has being the bigger person actually brought you peace? Or has it just taught other people that they can treat you however they want without any consequences? There is a dangerous epidemic of people-pleasing disguised as virtue. You swallow your anger when a friend makes a subtle, humiliating joke about you in public. You accept empty apologies from someone who continuously lies to your face. You tell yourself that you are being patient. You tell yourself that you are being kind. Friedrich Nietzsche, one of the most misunderstood philosophers in history, had a brutal term for this. He called it the morality of weakness. Nietzsche argued that unconditionally forgiving those who continuously disrespect you isn't a sign of moral superiority. It is a symptom of cowardice. It is a profound failure to protect your own dignity. If you have ever felt drained by people who only value you when you are useful to them, you are in the right place. Take a moment to subscribe, hit the bell icon, like this video, and share it with someone who needs to hear this. Leave a comment below, sharing the one boundary you struggle to enforce the most. We are building a sanctuary for those ready to reclaim their mental freedom. Today, we are not talking about how to be nicer. We are talking about the psychology of drawing a line in the sand. We are going to explore why your instinct to preserve a relationship is often the exact mechanism destroying your self-esteem, and why cutting certain people off is the most profound act of self-respect you can commit. Think about the last time someone treated you as an option. They canceled plans at the last minute, ignored your messages for days, and then drifted back into your life expecting you to be exactly where they left you. And what did you do? You accommodated them, you smiled, you made excuses for their behavior. You told yourself they were just busy. But deep down, you felt that subtle sting of devaluation. Every time you accept being treated as an alternative, you are actively participating in your own degradation. You are sending a psychological signal to your own brain that your time, your presence, and your energy hold no inherent value. Nietzsche believed that an individual's worth isn't handed to them by society. It is carved out by their own refusal to tolerate the unacceptable. To tolerate chronic disrespect is to slowly commit psychological suicide. The truth is, people do not respect kindness. They respect strength. And strength begins the moment you look someone in the eye and decide that your peace of mind is worth more than their conditional presence in your life. When someone minimizes your emotions, telling you that you are too sensitive or that you are overreacting, they are engaging in a subtle form of psychological warfare. They are systematically dismantling your trust in your own reality. If you forgive this manipulation, you are not keeping the peace. You are surrendering your sanity. You are giving them the pen to write the narrative of your life. Nietzsche urged us to become the authors of our own values. When you stop forgiving the unforgivable, a radical shift happens. You stop being a passive recipient of other people's toxic behavior, and you become the architect of your own environment. Let's talk about the smile you force when someone insults you in public and calls it a joke. We all know this exact scenario. You are sitting at a family dinner, or perhaps a social gathering with people you have known for years. Suddenly, someone drops a subtle, humiliating comment about your life, your choices, or your past. The room goes quiet for a fraction of a second. The tension spikes. Everyone looks at you to see how you will react. And what do? You laugh. You swallow the disrespect. You shrink yourself to keep the atmosphere pleasant. Nietzsche despised this specific type of social conformity. He understood that public ridicule is never just an innocent joke. It is a calculated test of dominance. It is a primal psychological display of power disguised as humor. When you laugh along to avoid conflict, you are not being polite or diplomatic. You are publicly confirming their dominance over you. You are literally handing them the psychological leash. A strong individual, a person who truly grasps their own inherent worth, does not let others define their boundaries in public. You do not need to shout, argue, or create a dramatic scene to reclaim your power. The most devastating response to a disrespectful joke is a dead, unwavering, silent stare. Look them directly in the eyes and do not say a single word. Let the heavy silence stretch. Let them drown in the awkwardness of their own blatant disrespect. Respect begins the precise moment you refuse to be the punchline in someone else's power trip. Now, let us move to something even more insidious, something that quietly destroys you from the inside out: the deliberate lie. I am not talking about a trivial white lie meant to spare a fleeting feeling. I am talking about a calculated deception from someone who knows the truth will hurt you, but chooses to manipulate your reality anyway to protect themselves. We so often forgive chronic liars because we are absolutely terrified of losing the relationship. We desperately convince ourselves that they just made a mistake, that they were scared, or that they will change. But intentional lying is not a mistake. It is an implicit, arrogant statement that says, I do not believe you deserve the truth, and I do not respect your intelligence enough to be honest. It is the ultimate form of intellectual and emotional disrespect. Nietzsche stated that truth requires profound courage. Therefore, a chronic liar is fundamentally a coward. When you repeatedly forgive a coward, you are actively inviting their weakness into your own life. You are telling your subconscious mind that your intelligence is negotiable. Every single time you accept a lie, you chip away at your own grip on reality. Start questioning your own memory, your own deeply ingrained instincts, and your own judgment. This is exactly how emotional predators and narcissists operate. They need you confused so they can control the narrative. To stop this psychological decay, you must adopt a philosophy of radical intolerance for deception. If someone lies to you once, deliberately, the dynamic of that relationship must fundamentally change. If they do it twice, the relationship must end. Period. This sounds harsh. It sounds unforgiving to the modern ear. But ask yourself this brutal question. How much of your life you already wasted trying to fix people who do not even respect you enough to look you in the eye and tell you the truth? Your time is finite. Your emotional energy is a rapidly declining resource. You absolutely cannot afford to spend your golden years deciphering the lies of people who lack the courage to be honest. Cutting a chronic liar out of your life is not an act of cruelty or bitterness. It is an act of extreme psychological self-preservation. It is exactly how you clean out your mental house to make room for peace. We need to have a very honest conversation about boundaries. You set a rule. You say no to something. And they do it anyway. They show up unannounced. They push your buttons. They make the exact joke you asked them to stop making. Why do they do this? Because human beings are naturally hierarchical, and they are constantly testing the structural integrity of your spine. A boundary without a severe consequence is not a boundary. It is merely a suggestion. When someone violates your boundary and you continue to grant them access to your life, you have just taught them that your words mean absolutely nothing. You are actively training them to disrespect you. Nietzsche understood that a life of dignity requires the aggressive creation and enforcement of your own laws. If you do not aggressively protect the perimeter of your peace, invaders will inevitably set up camp in your mind. You cannot negotiate with people who do not respect your borders. You must expel them. This leads directly into the parasite dynamic, the chronic exploitation of your kindness. Think of the person who only calls when their world is falling apart. They demand your time, your money, your emotional labor. They treat you like a free, on-demand therapist. But the second the tables turn, the precise moment you are the one drowning and actually need a favor, they are a ghost. What do? You justify it. You tell yourself, I am just a good person. I give without expecting anything in return. That sounds incredibly noble. But Friedrich Nietzsche would mercilessly tear that excuse apart. He called this the morality of weakness. You are actively masking your deep-seated fear of abandonment as unconditional kindness. Being kind is a profound strength, but allowing your kindness to be weaponized by opportunists is a betrayal of your own soul. If someone's respect for you is entirely conditional on what they can extract from your life, that is not a relationship. That is a predatory transaction, and you are the one getting scammed. Then there is the ultimate fracture, the betrayal of trust. Modern society romanticizes forgiveness. We are constantly fed the narrative that to err is human, to forgive divine. But when someone actively betrays you, whether it is infidelity, spreading your private secrets, or throwing you under the bus for personal gain, they did not make a mistake. A mistake is dropping a glass of water. Betrayal is a cold calculation. They meticulously weighed the immense value of your relationship against the temporary thrill of whatever they were chasing. And they concluded that you were entirely worth risking. If you welcome them back into your inner circle, you send a terrifying psychological message. My loyalty is cheap, and my trust can be broken without any real consequence. Nietzsche held loyalty as the ultimate hallmark of a genuinely strong spirit. A betrayal isn't a momentary lapse in judgment. It is a brutal revelation of their core character. When people show you who they are, believe them the very first time. Forgiving a deliberate betrayal is rarely an act of wisdom. It is often just a trauma response, a desperate attempt to cling to an illusion of a person who never actually existed. Let's address the most uncomfortable phase of this entire psychological framework, the fallout. When you finally implement this radical intolerance for disrespect, when you finally look an emotional parasite in the eye and permanently cut their access to your life, something terrifying will happen. You will feel an overwhelming, suffocating sense of guilt. Society has successfully programmed us to believe that cutting people off makes us the villain. We are conditioned from childhood to carry the heavy cross of other people's toxic behavior, instructed to keep the peace at the direct expense of our own mental health. This is precisely where the Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung's concept of the shadow becomes your most vital tool for psychological survival. Jung warned us about the extreme danger of identifying too heavily with our own persona, the polite, accommodating, nice mask we continuously wear for the world. We actively repress our capacity for anger, our capacity for ruthlessness, and our primal ability to walk away, simply because we are desperate to be perceived as good. But Jung understood a profoundly dark truth. A harmless person is not a good person. A good person is a very dangerous person who has that danger under strict voluntary control. If you cannot access your shadow, your unapologetic capacity to say a devastating no, you will forever remain prey to opportunistic predators. Chronic people pleasers are terrified of their own shadow. They falsely equate enforcing a strict boundary with being malicious or cruel. Let me completely reframe this for you right now. Destroying a toxic relationship to protect your own sanity is not an act of malice. It is the absolute highest form of self-love. Refusing to forgive chronic disrespect isn't a failure of kindness. It is the successful integration of your shadow. You must integrate your capacity to be utterly ruthless when your dignity is on the line. When you execute this psychological shift, the immediate consequence is brutal, unfiltered isolation. Your social circle will inevitably shrink. Friends will slowly stop calling. Family members might label you as arrogant, difficult, or entirely selfish. They will desperately attempt to gaslight you into believing that your new, unshakable boundaries are an act of unprovoked aggression. Let them. This is the exact moment where the ancient philosophy of Stoicism must anchor your reality. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius did not fear standing alone. He feared standing in the company of those who actively corrupted his character. You must learn to sit in an empty room, in absolute silence, and be perfectly at peace with the fact that you chose your own sovereign dignity over a crowded, noisy table of opportunists who secretly despised you. The Stoics practiced a profound concept called amor fati, the love of one's fate. You do not merely tolerate the painful isolation that comes from raising your standards, you actively embrace it. You love the empty chair at the table because it represents a boundary successfully defended. Isolation is not a punishment, it is a filter. It is the psychological crucible where the weak, dependent parts of your identity are systematically burned away. Nietzsche challenged us to transcend the herd morality, the pathetic societal pressure to lower our standards just to keep the collective comfortable. He demanded that we become the authors of our own values, standing firmly upon them even if the entire world demands that we sit down. Let's look at the actual biological reality of what happens when you continuously swallow disrespect. Your body physically keeps the score. The constant suppression of your own boundaries spikes your cortisol levels, keeping your nervous system in a perpetual state of fight or flight. You are literally sacrificing your physical health to maintain the illusion of peace with people who do not value you. Narcissists and emotional manipulators rely entirely on this predictable, manufactured guilt. They meticulously map out your emotional triggers. They know exactly which invisible strings to pull to make you feel like you are the one who is overreacting. When you forgive them, you are not taking the moral high ground. You are validating their predatory blueprint. You are proving that their manipulation tactics still work flawlessly on your psyche. We need to completely redefine the concept of forgiveness. Forgiveness is a profound, beautiful mechanism for healing from a genuine mistake. But forgiveness, when applied to deliberate, calculated, and repeated psychological abuse, is nothing more than a trauma bond. It is a fatal mechanism of self-abandonment. You are setting yourself on fire to keep someone else warm, and they are perfectly content watching you burn to ashes. When you stop forgiving the unforgivable, a radical transformation occurs in your neurobiology. You cease being a passive, reactive victim to your environment. You systematically reclaim the locus of control. You dictate exactly who gets the privilege of experiencing your energy, your empathy, and your time. You become a truly sovereign entity. But there is a catch. You have drawn the line. You have integrated your shadow. You have accepted the isolation. You have ruthlessly cut off the toxic elements of your external world. Yet, there is one final silent trap that absolutely ruins 99% of people who attempt to radically reinvent their lives. It is a psychological pitfall so deeply ingrained and so subtly destructive that you are probably falling into it right this very second without even realizing it. What happens when the ultimate disrespect doesn't come from them, but from the relentless, hypercritical voice inside your own head? We will tear that mechanism apart in the final chapter. We spend our entire lives building massive psychological fortresses to keep out toxic partners, manipulative family members, and opportunistic friends. We learn the hard way how to say no. We integrate the Jungian shadow. We finally accept the isolation. But what happens when you lock the heavy iron gates, turn around, and realize the predator is already inside the house? The ultimate, most destructive form of disrespect is the one you continuously inflict upon yourself. You would never let a stranger walk up to you on the street and call you worthless, incapable, or weak. You would immediately defend yourself. Yet, you lie awake at 2 a.m. allowing the voice inside your own head to hurl those exact same insults at your character. You break promises to yourself on a daily basis. You say you will start the business, leave the dead-end job, or finally enforce a boundary, and then you quietly cave in. Every single time you abandon your own goals for the sake of momentary comfort, you are committing an act of deep psychological betrayal against yourself. How can you possibly expect the external world to honor your boundaries when your own subconscious mind knows that you are bluffing? Nietzsche had zero tolerance for self-pity. He viewed it as a corrosive acid that eats away at human potential. He believed that the Übermensch, the ideal self-mastered individual, must be ruthlessly strict with their own internal code. You cannot demand sovereign respect from society while simultaneously feeding yourself psychological scraps in the dark. It is a biological paradox. Your external reality is merely a physical reflection of your internal standards. This is where the Stoic practice of radical self-accountability comes into play. Marcus Aurelius did not write his meditations to preach to the Roman citizens. He wrote a private journal to aggressively police his own thoughts. He understood that the only empire you truly control is the one entirely contained within your own skull. We must completely redefine what it means to be disciplined. Discipline is not about punishing yourself. Discipline is the highest, purest form of self-respect. It is the conscious refusal to let your temporary emotions sabotage your long-term dignity. You must stop forgiving your own chronic excuses. Yes, forgive your genuine mistakes. Forgive your awkward attempts at growth, but absolutely never forgive your own cowardice. Refuse to forgive that cynical, fearful part of your brain that desperately tries to convince you to stay small, quiet, and compliant, just to avoid the friction of growth. The ultimate freedom you are searching for does not come solely from cutting toxic people out of your life. That is only the first step. True mental freedom is achieved only when you ruthlessly cut away the weak, compliant, and self-sabotaging versions of your own identity. You are the architect of your own value. The the world will simply look at the price tag you put on yourself and pay it. Stop holding sales on your dignity. Raise the price, walk away from the negotiation table, and let the people who cannot afford your standards shop elsewhere.